On everyone, it is college football talk. I'm your host, Hunter DeLauder, and today is week 7 preview, otherwise known as Super Saturday preview. This is the hyped up week we all were looking at entering into this year, and now it's finally upon us. Cannot believe that A, season's already flown by this fast, but B, that all of these great games are happening all at once on one weekend. So we're going to dive into all the action this weekend, all the headliners. We're going to go around the country. We're going to get in our plane, fly around, all the other bigger games of the weekend, and then we're going to hand out some best bets to finish off today's episode. So do not want to miss anything. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're new here, welcome. Do not want to miss anything. Twice a week, all season long, go all year long too. Only college football. We may sprinkle in some other college sports, but we're about 98% college football here on this show. So make sure you guys are hitting the subscribe button, and if you're a reoccurring guest, make sure you're liking as well. And if you're listening on podcast Spotify, hit that follow button on there too. Social media at Hunter DeLauder or at DeLauder Hunter on Twitter, Hunter.DeLauder83 on Instagram. So hit me up there as well. We're gonna get into all the action here. So without further ado, feel the music. You know what that means? That means it's time to dig right into it. And we are going to start out at the Red River Rivalry game in Dallas, Texas. The Cotton Bowl State Fair will be going on. This game won't be at noon, though, this year. So it's going to be a little different. It's going to be at 3:30 on ABC. Number 1, Texas. Number 18, Oklahoma. These two great rivals. Historically, the Big 12 will meet again. This will be the first time in the SEC. So it's going to be a great environment, as it always is. It's one of the premier games that you have to attend if you're a college football fan. I have not been there myself. One day I hope to get there. But this is one of the premier games. Even on TV, it's an awesome spectacle to look at. So a lot to dive into this one. Main news, though, Quinn Ewers is back. He will be returning after being out 3 weeks. Missed 2 games, one, and then he missed the bye week. Obviously, nobody played then. But he's going to be back, which is great news for Texas. They get their star quarterback back. Arch Manning did a great job filling in, albeit the competition wasn't very good. But he stepped in, played really well. Now Quinn's back, ready to take back the reins here as the starting quarterback of Texas. Biggest question, though, for this game is, can Oklahoma keep it close? They're a 14.5-point favorite right now. And, it's just offensively, statistically, they haven't been able to do anything. They're 121st in total offense. They're only averaging about 28 points a game. They've only scored 15 touchdowns as a team. And you're going up against now a defense in Texas that's 3rd in total defense and 2nd in scoring defense. So they're only giving up 7 points a game. Albeit, again, the competition hasn't been very good. But, Oklahoma's offense hasn't been anything to brag about either. They still come in banged up a little bit off on the wide receiver front. They're hoping to get Deion Burks this week. He's questionable. Nick Anderson still is not going to be ready to go. Offensive line's been an issue for them all year, and now they're going up against a Texas D-line and linebacker group that will get after you. The linebackers are where you got to look at. Anthony Hill, David Benda, and Colin Simmons will all get after you. They're great at stopping the run. They're great at getting pressure. Colin Simmons leads the team with 4 sacks. They just have been very one-dimensional. Oklahoma has. They're decent running the football. They're still not great in that department. Their leading rusher is Javonte Burns, and he has under 200 yards. So, even in that really category, they're not anything great. Michael Hawkins' legs are kind of have to be a big part of how Oklahoma tries to stay in this game, let alone win the game. Last year, Dylan Gabriel had over 100 yards rushing alone. So there is you can find room to kind of maybe beat that Texas defense or make them uncomfortable. If Hawkins can maybe make those off-script plays, using his legs to create time, find guys down the field, draw penalties, just use his legs to get extra yards and you saw what he did last week or 2 weeks against Auburn. That one, his quarterback run he had for a touchdown where he split the two safeties. I mean, you can see that speed he has. Let's see. I mean, if he can do that against Texas, it's going to be a big part of why they're staying in the game. But we'll see because like I said, how they can get after you. I mean, Oklahoma is 11th in sacks allowed. They've given up 14 on the season, and Texas is 29th in team sacks. So, like I said, like they'll get after you, but vice versa. If you're Oklahoma, you're pretty good at getting after the quarterback. You're 5th in team sacks, and Texas is 28th in sacks allowed. So they can give up some sacks. Not many, but there are. You could find room there. And now you get Quinn Ewers back, who's not as mobile as Arch Manning, who's coming back from an abdominal strain injury, who's missed the last 2 games. I mean, if Oklahoma can get pressure on him and maybe just force him to either get rid of the ball faster or not as accurately as where he wants it to go, and Oklahoma's really good at creating turnovers. They're a top 5 team in interceptions this year. I mean, if you can get after him, create pressure, make things uncomfortable in the pocket for Ewers. They did a pretty good job against Nico and Maliava when they played Tennessee. But again, they couldn't capitalize when they got the ball, turnovers. That's going to have to be how this script is. They're going to have to be able to slow it down, run the football using Hawkins and Devon Barnes. And they're going to have to find a way to make this game sloppy, get pressure on Ewers, create turnovers, just get it to the fourth quarter. I would just say. Otherwise, Texas is just going to be able to maybe get a score here and there. It's going to be close, but then they're just going to be able to overwhelm you and then, hit the big one to eventually kind of land the final knockout blow. I mean, that's kind of how I see this game going. Kind of maybe like a back and forth affair. Maybe Oklahoma just kind of keeps Texas at bay for the most of the game, but Texas is just going to be too much. I mean, there were too many weapons for Texas with Bond, Wingo, with Gunnar Helm. I know I'm forgetting another guy in the wide receiver room, but they just have too many weapons on the outside. You're getting Ewers back. He's going to be able, maybe he has a little rust, but I just think he's going to be too good. And they're going to wear down this Oklahoma defense because they're going to be out there too much. I just don't see the Oklahoma offense moving the ball consistently enough to stay in this game. They're going to almost have to look at like what Arkansas did with Tennessee last week and keep it a low-scoring game. Just don't see it happening. I think Texas wins this game. I don't know if they cover or not, but I do think they're going to score a lot more and maybe pull ahead late. At 37-24 is the final for me. Oklahoma maybe keeps it close. Maybe Hawkins' legs, extend drive, score some points for the Sooners. But this is going to be a game that I think Texas is going to take care of business with before they get the big showdown next week with Georgia coming into town. All right, moving on. Penn State, number 4 Penn State at USC, over under 50.5. Penn State currently a 4-point favorite. In this one, big one for me is USC going to be physically stack up physically enough to match up with Penn State. Penn State is a lot better or bigger and better on the offensive line and on the defensive line. USC offensively running the football, they're 78th in running. They get pushed around last week against Minnesota, and that was on the defensive side of the football. They only have one guy over 300 pounds on the defensive line, and Penn State's offensive linemen are all much bigger and more athletic, better athletes than what Minnesota's are. And so you're going to get that now. It's not the best recipe. Penn State's going to be able to get at the quarterback. I'm assuming they got a really dynamic pass rush with Abdul Carter and Donnie Dennis Sutton. They're 28th in team sacks. I mean, USC's going to have to find a way to get off to a fast start in this one because Penn State has not allowed. They've only allowed an average. They've only allowed 17 points in the second half this year. They have not allowed a single point in the third quarter. And if USC can't get off to a fast start and they fall behind going into the second half, I just don't see how they're going to be able to even compete in this one. They're going to have to be able to limit the running game for Penn State with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. I mean, both of them they're averaging both over 7 yards a carry. Or excuse me, they're both averaging at least 5 yards a carry. Katron Allen's at 5, Singleton at 7. almost 8. They're 19th in rushing in total, but I don't see how USC is going to be able to stack up physically enough. They might be able to maybe look what Bowling Green did, or try to think who else may have given them fits. I mean, really, it was Bowling Green that was able to kind of maybe stretch them out and attack them vertically down the field. And maybe that's what they're going to have to do. Miller Moss is going to have to be able to hit some shots down the field, hit your playmakers. I just don't know if there's going to be enough anyway. But maybe USC, listen, backs against the wall here. You just suffered your second conference loss last week. Now you come back home. You get Penn State going cross country. Teams that Big Ten teams that have had to play in 2 time zones are only one team has a win. They're 1-8. So maybe you catch USC or you catch Penn State in a little bit of a lull here. It's going to be a noon kick West Coast time. So sun's going to be beaten down at LA Coliseum. Can USC attack them early? But also USC's got to be able to limit turnovers. Turnovers have been a big killer for them. They had a couple last week against Minnesota. They had 3 against Wisconsin. They turned the ball over twice against Michigan. They've turned the ball over too much. Can't do that against a really good pass rush, a really good defense at Penn State. And then you're just giving more opportunities to Drew Aller and that explosive offense with Warren and Wallace and Fleming and all of them and Amari Evans. And then you got to mention, we already talked about the running game. I just think it's too much for Penn State. I do think USC is going to be able to score some, but I do think Penn State's going to be able to, if not take a big lead, maybe USC gets a couple scores, maybe scores a little bit late to make the game closer than it needs to be. But Penn State, I like to win 30-24, 23. Like I said, I think maybe USC scores late to make it a closer game, but the score will indicate how maybe dominant Penn State is. So moving on, though, to some of the more headlining games. This is the headliner game in the Big Ten, probably of the country this weekend. Although there are quite a few. This one's on NBC. This is the 7:30 game. I believe it's 7:30 or 8 o'clock kickoff. Number 2, Ohio State at number 3, Oregon. Ohio State is a 3-point favorite right now as they go on the road to Autzen Stadium in Eugene. Over under 53.5. Big question to start off. Oregon's defensive line taking on Ohio State's offensive line. Ohio State's offensive line has been solid this year, but there are still some cracks that you can take advantage of. Oregon is 12th in team sacks. Ohio State's 15 sacks allowed. So, and again, but the competition hasn't been very good for Ohio State that they played. So they played pretty well. But Oregon can get after the quarterback. They get 3 on average a game, and they play better competition to this point. I just think that a big question, though, outside of that is going to be if Oregon can stop the run. Because, outside of the Ashton Genty game against Oregon, Oregon's played the run pretty solid this year. They're only giving up just over 100 yards a game. But now you have 2 of the most dynamic backs in the country coming in with Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson. Both are averaging over 7.5 yards a carry. Judkins, to this point, has been the lead back, but Travion Henderson's right there with him. And we haven't really seen this point, but Will Howard, is he going to be able to, will he be using his legs a little more than he has this year? Has Chip Kelly maybe been hiding some plays or not calling some plays because the competition you haven't needed to use it? It's been so down that you can kind of keep some plays for this game. Maybe are there some quarterback design runs? Are there some, read options, specific plays for Will Howard to use his legs? Because he has used them before in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if he uses them this weekend. But that's just going to be a big one because Ohio State averaging over 220 yards a game on the ground. Like I just said, Oregon just giving up just over 100 yards. There's line of scrimmage in this game on both sides of the football is going to tell which team's going to have more success. Talk about that. Will Oregon then be able to turn the football over or create turnovers? Will Howard has turned the ball over 3 times the last 3 games. He has at least 1 turnover. Oregon is 63rd in passes intercepted, but this is going to be the best secondary Ohio State's played to this point. You got guys like Tysheem Johnson, Kobe Savage, Brandon Johnson, Jabbar Muhammad. Muhammad was the big transfer they got from Washington, who was Washington's top corner last year. This is the best secondary that Ohio State has played to this point. And offensively for Oregon, will Dylan Johnson be able to put pressure maybe on a defense for Ohio State that is very good? I'm not going to discredit them. They're a very good offense with defensive studs that will be NFL, that will be first, second, third rounders. And there's no question about it. But they haven't been tested at all. The best I went through and found every offensive or every opponent Ohio State's played this year in their ranked scoring offense. Akron, 127. Western Michigan, 79. Marshall, 61st. Michigan State, 114th. Iowa, 86th. The best team they've played statistically in scoring offense is Marshall. I mean, it's a big reason why Ohio State is currently first in the country in scoring defense with 6.8 points per game because they haven't played anybody. There's not been an offense that has challenged this defense. This is going to be the best offense that they will play to this point. You will have to figure out, this secondary is going to get challenged for sure. Because you gotta have to fight against Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, and the receivers, not to mention Terrence Ferguson, who's an elite tight end. Travis Kelce, like tight end. This is a very explosive group. Not to mention in the backfield, you got Jordan James, who had a career game last weekend against Michigan State. If you ask Michigan State fans, they would say Oregon was the more physical team because Michigan State's played both these teams. Oregon, it was the more physical team. Maybe Ohio State now has a point to prove. Can this defensive line get after it, Dylan Gabriel? With Ty Hamilton, Jack Sawyer, Tua Maloau, and Tyleik Williams, they're going to have to put pressure. And they're pretty good at stopping the run. I will say that. They shut down Iowa last weekend and stopping the run, and Iowa's a top 5 rushing team offensively. But even if you can do that, if Oregon can run the ball just enough, they can maybe now you can make yourself two-dimensional, keep Ohio State on their toes, or kind of keep them flat on their feet in some, to where now they don't know what you're going to be doing. So now you can either attack them on the outside or run the ball, maybe not as much up the middle, but get on the edge some. It's going to be very interesting to see because there's a lot. You can look at the stats and go one way or another. I just think that Oregon's a more tested team to this point. They've played a little bit better competition with Boise State, Boise State, UCLA, Michigan State, Oregon State, where Ohio State hasn't played anybody really to this point. Their best team they've played was Iowa, and Iowa's nothing special. So it's the first time Ohio State's gone, or second time they've been on the road, but this is going to be the first, and probably before next to Penn State, the biggest road game they're going to play all year. Autzen Stadium is just a different animal, and I just think that home field, you could say that home field doesn't have the biggest advantage, as recently, maybe as it did in the past, but this is one of the places that it will always have. It'll always, I'm trying to think of the word. Oregon's so tough to be at home, and this is one of the reasons why, because the crowds, the fan, they get on you. It's not the biggest stadium in the world, but they will make a difference. I just think that's too much. Both these teams are going to be playoff teams, but I just think that Oregon, this is a bad spot. Ohio State's coming on the road, going cross country in a real atmosphere. First time they're going to get challenged against an actual offense. I like the Ducks in this spot. I like them to cover. I like them to win outright. 27-23 is the final. Like I said, these two teams may meet again, and Ohio State might beat them by 50. But I just think on this day, that atmosphere, this kind of team is going to catch Ohio State and beat them, and Oregon's going to get the leg up. Depending on how the rest of the teams go, a win like this could be seeing a new number 1. That would be more if Texas loses, but look at this though. Top 3 matchup here. Next week, Texas, Georgia play. That's a top 5 matchup. And then Alabama and Tennessee play. Those are your top 7 teams all play each other. It's pretty sweet right there. Anyway, moving on. to the ABC primetime game of the week. This is number 9 Ole Miss heading to Death Valley, take on number 13 LSU. Ole Miss -3.5, over under 61.5. Talk about line of scrimmage, D line versus O line with Oregon, Ohio State. Ole Miss defensive line, LSU offensive line. Here we go. Third in team sacks, Ole Miss's 24 sacks they have this year. They were averaging 4 a game. LSU has only given up 2 sacks this year. They have been elite on offense as far as keeping Nussmeier protected. Not saying that they haven't had their flaws. I mean, South Carolina game, they were getting eaten up by Dylan Stewart and that pass rush. So you can say there are signs that they can get pushed around and attacked. But that's going to be a big matchup. It's going to be Jared Ivey and Princely Uman Menyelin. I tried to break this down. I got to get this name down. It drives me nuts that I can't. Princely Uman Menyelin. There we go. So Ivy has 5 sacks this year. Uman Menyelin has 3.5. You're going against, those are the 2 edge guys. You're going to be going against 2 of the top edge guys, or 2 of the top tackles, with Emory Jones and Will Campbell. There you go. Who's going to win that? Is Nussmeier going to have a nice clean pocket all day, or is that dynamic to pass rush? We didn't even talk about Walter Nolan, who has multiple sacks this year. You know, that some of those linebacker dudes have got to the quarterback as well. So, like, it's not just those 2, but those are the 2 main matchups, those tackles and those edge guys. Who's going to step up for either team? Ole Miss, running or stopping the run is also going to be something that's going to have to be talked about first in the country. LSU has found some stability running the football as of late, but they're still 97th in rushing offense. Only rushing for about 131 yards a game. You're going to have to be able to run the ball some. South Carolina was not able to. And South Carolina really is a predominantly run-first offense. Kentucky had some success, but still nothing much. It's going to have to be enough to where you're able to attack that secondary for Ole Miss. And that leads me to my next point is, can Nussmeier and this offense attack that Ole Miss secondary? LSU is 7th in scoring, or 7th in passing offense. Ole Miss, 50th in passing defense. There is room to attack that secondary. It's a solid group, but it's not something that is locked down 24/7. And Ole Miss is going to have to figure out a way to stop Aaron Anderson, Kyron Lacey, Mason Taylor in the tight end spot. I mean, there are guys. And Nussmeier will, if there's someone open, he will find them. And that's going to lead back to the pressure rate right there with Ole Miss. Can they get home and create an uncomfortable feeling for Nussmeier and get pressure on him to make things to where now you might be forcing, rushing, speeding up your time clock. Then you become poor accuracy. That leads to turnovers. And vice versa, LSU, are they going to be able to get after Jackson Dart? Jackson Dart has been under duress all season long. This is an offensive line for Ole Miss that has struggled mightily all year. They keep shuffling guys in and out. They're 77th in sacks allowed. They've given up 11 on the year. LSU is 16th in team sacks. They have 15 on the year. They're averaging 3 a game. And they're just behind Penn State in pressure rate. They pressure 49% of the time on dropbacks. So they are getting pressure on quarterbacks, making life miserable. And if you haven't heard of these 2 guys, get to know the names. Braden Swinson and Savion Jones. These are the edge guys for LSU. Savion Jones has 4.5 sacks. Braden Swinson has 5. They will get after Dart at least once or twice in this game. It's guaranteed at this point. But Jackson Dart cannot take the bad sack where they're maybe in between field goal range and not. They're like, that would be like maybe between like the 35 and like the 45, like in LSU territory. But you cannot take the bad sack. If you're on the verge of field goal range, it killed them against Kentucky. You cannot do that this week. And listen, Ole Miss has some injuries on the outside where, mainly looking at Trey Harris, who's questionable. I would be kind of surprised if he maybe plays. If he does play, he's going to be like maybe he's going to be less than 90%. Like, it's not going to be a full Trey Harris that we're accustomed to seeing. And he has got predominantly like over 50% target share. Like, it's just been the Trey Harris show. He has more receiving yards than like the next 2 or 3 guys combined for Ole Miss. So now that means if Harris can't go, who's going to step up for Ole Miss? Is it going to be Juice Wells? Didn't really have a big game last week. Caden Lee, Jordan Watkins, someone's got to step up. I mean, it's a secondary that can get worked for LSU. Talked about pressure rate and how they can get to the quarterback. Well, if they're not getting home, that's leaving their secondary guys on an island, which has been susceptible to giving up yardage and points. So it's going to be really fascinating to see. But like I said, I just think that Ole Miss's inability to keep Dart upright is going to be a difference maker in this one. I think LSU is going to be able to limit Ole Miss's offense enough. It's going to be a back and forth affair. I have very high scoring games. What I see in this one, over under 61.5. I mean, this is a one that I could see blowing that number out of the water. But Death Valley at night is just something that, very few teams actually go into that stadium and win, let alone have much success. And I think this is just one of those nights. It's a must win, I feel like, for both teams. Both teams really need this one. Ole Miss needs this one big time. Not to mention, Ole Miss, this is the 7th straight game for them. This is their 3rd straight SEC game. LSU is coming off a bye week, and the week prior to that, they played South Alabama. So they have been resting up for this one for a couple weeks now. And even before that, they had UCLA. So they really haven't been tested at all. They've been they can be getting guys healthy for this game. This is the big one. And I just think LSU is going to step up big time. There's plays to be made against that Ole Miss. Once you get past that Ole Miss, that first and second level, that secondary, I just don't know if they're going to handle LSU's offensive guys. Give me the Tigers, 41-35. LSU wins in a shootout. It was one last year for the ages. This is another one for sure. All right. Moving into our final headlining game. Number 8, Tennessee. It's the 3rd Saturday in September. Usually is. This one is, I think the 3rd, is this, what are we in? The 2nd Saturday of October. Florida heads to Knoxville. Take on Tennessee. Tennessee is minus 15.5. Over under 55.5. Here we go. Coming in this one. UF. I'm going to give UF some flowers here. Florida is 7-2 in Knoxville since 2006. And since the turn of the century, in 2000, the Gators are 19-5 against the Volunteers. 19-5. It has been a rivalry that Florida has historically dominated. They lead it in the all-time series. But in this one, it just feels weird. It just feels a little different. So you have two teams coming in. You have Florida coming in, back-to-back wins. But you had an offense that offensively, they struggled in the second half. They got shut out. But they did put up 24 in the first half. And the defense played awesome. They played great. But now you come into this one, you're taking on a Tennessee team that stumbled into Fayetteville and got worked a little bit, just limited to 14 points offensively. Defense played fine, played good enough to win the game, but offensively, just Imaliava just couldn't make the plays needed to win the game. And now he comes back home where Tennessee, here's your home away splits for you. So Tennessee's 4th in points per game. They're averaging 46 a game, which is awesome. On the road, they're 19.5 points a game. At home, they're averaging 70 points a game. Now, albeit that's against Chattanooga and I believe Kent State. 70 points per game at home is pretty good. This is their first home game, and let's see, they played since week 3, I want to say. Yeah, because they played NC State in Charlotte week 2. So week 3. So it's been a while. They're coming finally back home after a 2-game road trip where, you split the series. You split that, but it just felt like you shouldn't have. But just looking at the stats, though, I mean, the biggest question in this game is Florida going to be able to stop Tennessee from just scoring at will. Tennessee, here's your stats for you. Tennessee, we're going to talk about points per game. They're 5th in total yards per game, over 500 yards a game. Passing yards it's 46, 250 yards a game. Maliava, 66.7 completion percentage. He has 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. Where it concerns me some with Tennessee. Their wide receiver room is a little banged up. Dante Thorson is questionable in this game. They do expect Brew McCoy and Squirrel White to play in Saturday's game. It's going to be the one with Dante Thorson that's going to give – he's going to try to give it a go in warm-ups to see where he can be availability-wise. I think he has an ankle injury. He got suffered last week. And what Tennessee wants to do more than anything is run the football. They're just an up-tempo run offense. Everyone likes to think that they're a flashy, shoot it down the field. We're playing 4 verts all game long. They run the ball as they're a top 5 team percentage-wise, running the football in the SEC. If not top 3, they want to establish the run game to set up those shots down the field. That's why they're 5th in offense, in rushing offense. They're rushing the ball for over 260 yards a game. Dylan Sampson is 10th in rushing yards a game with 117. He's 2nd in rushing touchdowns with 12. So, he's one of the most dominant running backs in the country. And Florida, unfortunately, is 74th in rush and defense in total. They're 96th in yards per game. They're 82nd in yards allowed, and they're 101st in rush defense. They've given up 8 touchdowns on the ground already this year, and they're giving up almost 175 yards a game on the ground. It's not the best formula. Florida's got to find a way also to limit explosive plays. They're 104th in explosive plays allowed of 20 yards or more. Tennessee is 44th in total yards, 20-yard plays or more offensively. So it's eating at Florida big time. And when I've seen Florida go up against teams that against SEC teams, let's just throw SEC team or non-conference teams away, like UCF. Even against Mississippi State, who's 1-4. That Mississippi State had 240 yards on the ground. They almost had 500 yards total offense against this defense. A&M had over 300 yards on the ground. Miami rushed for over 150 yards on the ground. This is an offense or a defense that will get worked by teams that are competent offensively. And I'm just concerned that defense that we saw last weekend, it was more of a flash in the pan than what we actually saw or going forward. I just don't know if Tennessee or if Florida has enough to stop them. And then offensively, are they going to be able to keep up with Tennessee? Tennessee's defense is awesome. Again, they are 4th in scoring defense. Tennessee is. They're giving up less than 10 points a game. They've only allowed 4 touchdowns on the season. It was 2 against Arkansas and 2 against Texas or Oklahoma. They're 2nd in total defense. They're only giving up 227 yards a game, 3.81 yards per play. And Florida's 62nd scoring offense. They're scoring 30 points a game. They're 60th in yards per game, which is good, but they're 83rd in rush offense. And Tennessee's going to be able to stop the run. They're 2nd offensively in run defense. They were able to stop Arkansas, who is Quinton Jackson, who could run all over people. They limited him to a quiet game. It's just tough sledding, it feels like. And not being able to score in the second half against UCF concerns me some. The passing game is what it is. You have a decent group with Badger, DK, and who's the other guy? In Eugene Wilson, who played last week, which is good. They get him back now, 2nd week in a row. He's going to be back from that knee injury. So, we'll see. My expectations aren't high for Florida. I just think Tennessee's going to be able to run away with this one. All due respect to the Gators. This atmosphere at night in Neyland is going to be insane. It reminds me a little bit of the Kentucky game from 22 when Kentucky went in. They were a decent group offensively. Defensively, they were okay as well. But it was a night game, and Tennessee was just able to do whatever they wanted to. They just boa constricted Kentucky from doing anything they wanted all night long, and then they were able to just score at will on them. So I just kind of think that's how this game goes. I like the Vols to win big. I think they cover that line. 40-20 is what I think the score is going to be. The Florida's just not going to be able to stop them, and I just don't think they're going to be able to score to keep up. It might be close at first, but the Volunteers are going to have to step up. But let's just say Florida wins this game. What does that mean? Well, it means that they're 4-2, And then they head back home here in Gainesville, take on a Kentucky group that is so-so, can run the ball well, and has a decent defense, but nothing scares you from the quarterback position. I mean, that's another win you could maybe steal. It's all about almost for Florida this year. It's like stealing wins at this point because there's just how low expectations were. You almost have to steal wins, which isn't the best place you want to be in this program. But like at this point, this is where Florida is. But if you can get one on the road here at Tennessee, give Tennessee their second loss to an unranked opponent, man, that would be big. What's going to happen is Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway are going to have to step up. They're going to have to find a way to run the football with Montreal Johnson, which hasn't been a big threat for them, or like a threat they can use this year. They're going to have to stretch the ball down the field, but more importantly, they're going to have to get ahead early. I think an early lead's going to have to be imperative for Florida because if they fall behind, again, talked about this at just ad nauseum right here. Florida is not a team built to come back. They are not a play from behind type of offense. They want to run the football some and then build off of that with play action. They're not a team that's built to throw the ball 30 plus times a game. They're just not. And so if you fall behind 10, 13, 21-7, let's just say, I don't see any room that they come back and win. They just don't have the difference makers to stretch the ball down the field to, do that. And so that's why it just concerns me some. This is, I feel like a poor matchup for Florida. But maybe, listen, you're riding off 2 wins, and maybe they just keep it going. And maybe they just get to Maliava. They got to make it uncomfortable, force some turnovers. I just don't think it happens. I think, if anything, they could just run the ball all day long, and then, do what you want to do and set it up for downfield shots. 40-20, I think Tennessee wins. And that leads us into Around the Country. Do it every week, every game, every episode. We do either recap Around the Country or we do preview Around the Country. Today is Around the Country. We're going to get in the plane and we're going to fly around. What other games are going on this season or around this week that we need to be keeping our eye on? They're not the headliners, but we need to keep our eye on them because this could be one of those like lull, and all of a sudden you look and be like, whoa, we got a good game going on here. These are the games. So, got number 11, Iowa State, 8 o'clock kickoff on Fox, heading to Morgantown. Mountaineers are going to be wearing their Coldline jerseys. They look outstanding. It is going to be a rowdy and raucous environment as they welcome in the number 11 Iowa State Cyclones. Can West Virginia pull out a big win there? They got a huge one on the road in Stillwater last weekend. Now you welcome in an Iowa State team with Rocco Beck and company that wants to run the pound the rock and take shots down the field. Can West Virginia counter that? Stop the run, which is most importantly against a solid and veteran group up front for Iowa State. And score some points. Continue to build off. They've been able to put points up on the board. It's just been the defense has kind of been lackluster at late in games. It's cost them. But listen, they're undefeated right now in Big 12 play, and that's all that matters. Both the losses have been out of conference. So you're undefeated in Big 12 play. Can they keep it going? South Carolina's at Alabama, number 7 Alabama. Alabama at home for the first time since they beat Georgia, but also back at home since their inexcusable loss against Vanderbilt. And now South Carolina comes in. I don't know what to make of South Carolina. They can't really do much offensively. They want to be a run-first offense that just, when the run isn't there, they can't really throw the ball very well. So give me Alabama, probably win big here. I think they're a 21-point favorite. I wouldn't be shocked if they blow them out and win like 45-10. I think Bama's got a chip on their shoulder this week as far as having to deal with all the media and all the talk about where Bama is right now. You got folks on Feinbaum just letting loose. But if they lose this one as well, DeBoer may not make it to next week as far as the fans just revolting on him. So I do think the Crimson Tide get a big win, though. Washington's at Iowa. Washington coming off a big win last week with Michigan coming to town last week. But now Washington has to go back on the road here and go to Iowa. It's a noon kick. Iowa's coming off a bad loss, but they're back at home. think they're going to be able to slow this one down some, put points up, and limit Washington from doing much offensively. Will Rogers has turned the football over a little bit this year, and I just think that Iowa's defense is going to be able to force some turnovers again this week. Iowa has an outstanding rushing offense. Washington's defense is so-so at stopping the run, so give me the Hawkeyes to win this one. UAB at Army. Army, or Black Knights podcast here. We support all of our troops. Talked about it last week, or last episode. We support all of our troops, but we love the Black Knights. Army is a 26-point favorite, looking to stay unbeaten in conference play as well. Knights, Black Knights. Cal's at Pitt. Pitt looking to get moved to 6-0, which would be big time. For Cal, which team are we going to get? Are we going to get the first half Miami or the second half Miami? Do they come into this one flat and just deflated after what happened last week? Or are they able to maybe just put that behind you and now look at spoiling an undefeated season for Pitt? Louisville's at Virginia. A good, solid ACC game here. We'll see if Louisville can bounce back after a bad loss last weekend. Virginia looking to keep things going. Virginia's 4-1 after a terrible season they were last year, even the year before. They're 2-0 in conference play, 4-1 right now, looking to get another win, stay unbeaten in that regard. Memphis is at USF. The only reason why we're talking about this one, this game is supposed to be at USF this weekend. Hurricane Milton just came through here, and T's and P's to all that were affected by that. I'm up here in Gainesville right now for school, but I am from that area that got hit. Luckily, our house wasn't too bad. Pretty damage-wise, pretty limited to the point. Obviously, power's not there right now, but Raymond James Stadium in Tampa got smoked. Raymond James Stadium is flooded right now. The Tropicana Field doesn't have a roof. So, interesting to see if they get that game ready in time for Saturday, or they have to push it back or just delay it. Now, Arizona at BYU, number 14 BYU. The Cougars looking to stay unbeaten at home with a Arizona team that did get a nice win last week with Utah, but can they find their footing a little bit more? The season had a little more higher hopes than what has transpired into being right now. So let's see if they can go on the road and get a big win. Vanderbilt at Kentucky. Vandy, let's see if they can not put last week's game ahead of this one in a sense where like you can't get too high or you're just riding so high in that one that you just come out and get smoked in this one. It happened a little bit earlier this year. They got a big win at home, Virginia Tech. Went to Georgia State and lost. Can't have that happen here. They're going into a Kentucky group at Kroger Field that will slow things down and make life miserable for you if you do that. But I think Diego Pavia and this group know the implications of not letting last week's game get ahead of them. They already saw, like I just said, like they know what it's like to do that for even just looking at this year. So I think they have their heads right going into Kentucky. I don't really know who's going to win this one, so I'm just going to stay away from it. But number 18, Kansas State goes to Colorado. We'll see if Kansas State can slow things down some, run the football effectively, and maybe just Avery Johnson play his style of game. Colorado's going to want to try to, just maybe speed things up some. They're not going to be able to run the football. So Shedeur Sanders is going to have to be able to make plays. And once again, Travis Hunter on the outside. We'll see if they can do that. Expect a high-scoring game. But I do think Kansas State's going to be able to win this one. I think their defense is just going to be too good. They're going to make just enough stops to beat the Buffalo. And with that, we will head into our final segment of the day. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. Like I said, do not want to be missing anything. So if you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. Continue to grow the channel. We're trying to get to 200 subscribers. You can only do that if you guys hit that subscribe button and like and share the videos as well. All right, moving on. Final segment of the day. We are best bets time. 13-9 on the season. We are 4 games over 500, and a big reason for that, 5-0 week last week. Looking to build off of that. I got, what do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plays for you. You can see them right there. If you're listening on Spotify, LSU plus 3.5, Oregon plus 3, Iowa minus 3, West Virginia +3, and Army -26. LSU. I love LSU in this spot. Just love it. Oregon at home. Just home underdogs, and Autzen does not happen really ever. So give me the Ducks a big time there. Iowa, like I said, I think they're going to be able to slow things down. They're going to create some turnovers, play a classic Iowa football game, and just shut down Washington. West Virginia, I just think they're just going to get one of those big wins like they usually do at home. And Army's 26-point favorites. But the big reason why I think they're going to be able to just dominate this one. So Army, again, number one in rushing offense. They're averaging 361 yards a game. As a team, they're averaging almost 7 yards a carry, and they have 21 rushing touchdowns. UAB is 126 in rush defense. They are giving up almost 230 yards a game on the ground. They've allowed 15 rushing touchdowns, and they're giving up an average of 5.919 yards a game. There you go. You're playing right into what Army wants to do. Give me the Black Knights big. They were 11-point favorites last week, and they won by 42. Give me them big at home against UAB and the Blazers. And with all that being said, that wraps up today's episode of Super Saturday Week 7 preview. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast. Like I said, do not want to be missing anything. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on Spotify as well if you listen on podcast. And find me on social media on Twitter at DeLauder Hunter, Instagram Hunter.DeLauder83. Make sure you guys watch, like, subscribe, enjoy this weekend's action. It's going to be a hell of a weekend. Cannot wait to watch all the action and be back for Week 7 recap on Monday. Enjoy the episode, obviously, and enjoy this weekend's action. I'll be back. This is College Football Talk, signing off for now.